right, everyone. How's everyone doing? Great? Let's keep the energy up again. So before we get started, just a super quick introduction. So I'm Dilla, co-founder and CPO of SPUN. We're online visa startup starting last year. And let's do some rounds of introduction first. So Tom, please introduce yourself.
Yes, Tom Slack. I'm the product lead for Southeast Asia for Canva. I joined Canva 4 years ago in a strategy role, working with the global teams on how to grow monthly active users and revenue, and then about 6 months ago stepped into the product role for Southeast Asia. So thank you for having me.
Nice. So Tom, before we deep dive into AI, right, can you share a little bit of your journey at Canva, especially those early days as you just joined in the regional team, and what's been the most exciting for you in Southeast Asia so far?
Yeah, this is my second stint at Canva. I joined originally back in 2015, and Canva was a much different organization and product then, 10 years ago, but rejoined in 2021, and as I said, into a strategy role. So really helping sort of the senior leaders across the business identify the large sort of user growth and revenue opportunities. And yeah, the most exciting thing I think about Southeast Asia is just the untapped opportunity that still seems to be there. As I said, when I joined in 2015, it seemed like we had so much opportunity, and then 10 years on, we've had so much growth, but it still feels like there's so much left to do. And in Southeast Asia in particular, it's such a sort of dynamic and booming market for Canva. So yeah, really excited about the opportunity.
Nice. So, Canva started as a simple design tool to like world's most beloved design platform, essentially. So, how has AI shaped, the way you build and evolve these products? Especially you joined in the early days, and I see how it's evolved since you rejoined and until today.
Yeah, I mean, like AI, it really hasn't changed the why for Canva. Like Canva's, mission from the get-go was empowering the whole world to design, which is a pretty ambitious mission. The sort of like near-term goal is to get to 1 billion monthly active users, which in 2012 or 13 when it started, anyone that said that a design tool could get to 1 billion users would have thought you were crazy. Those are sort of numbers for the social media platforms and the messaging platforms. But the only way that we can really do it is to literally empower everyone to design and be creative, and that's not just professional designers, that's students and teachers and people that run small, medium businesses and solopreneurs. So that has sort of been the mission and the why for Canva, and AI really just changes the how and changes it in a really sort of powerful and positive way. To hit that sort of scale, we really need to be able to serve users in every corner of the world and every use case imaginable. Canva has thousands of document types, and there's literally any use case you can think of, Canva really serves, and AI sort of just unlocks that even further and equips users with the sort of like the design skills that they need to produce something really creative and impactful. So I guess doesn't change the why, but it really changes the how we achieve that mission. Yeah.
Interesting. And you mentioned essentially 3 things. So one, various document templates tailored to every region. Second, you mentioned about segments as well earlier, where for students, for like enterprises, every different type of users, and also different regions, right, as you scale, right? So I think curious to learn, what are some of the lessons you've learned about localizing all these products, whether it's AI product, non-AI product, whatever, and so that it could really click with different regions. You told me a little bit earlier about the global product setup and the local product setup. So curious to learn more about this, and maybe it could be a good lesson learned for everyone in the room.
Yeah, I think one of the big lessons for us in terms of localization is, how to be really effective in a local market. Oftentimes you get to be a large company and you're always focused on scale, like how do we efficiently scale a feature or a part of the product. But every market in the world just has their own cultural nuances, their own expectations of how payments work, authentication, how all parts of the product work. And so we really sort of took a step back and wanted to really invest in sort of each of our key markets around the world, Indonesia being one of the primary ones. Indonesia for us is like our 3rd largest market the largest market in Asia, so a really important market for Canva. And so I think in terms of like localizing our AI suite of features, but all of our features really, it's like what are the cultural nuances, what are the tones that we need to strike. And we've had examples of that, like with like Magic Write, for example. Early testing revealed that it was really probably too formal for Japanese and too neutral for Spanish, and so we really tweaked that. Text to image, originally it was like trained on really like a Western-centric data set, and sort of that bore out in the outputs, and so we did a lot of work on making sure that was trained on like a really diverse data set, so that a user in India sees what they create reflects their world in India and Argentina and Nigeria. So really focusing on being effective first and then efficient and scaling second, I think, is a really important lesson for us.
Yep, an exciting point there. I don't know if people noticed that some of the misconceptions of localization tends to be about just translating and make it work for whatever country, right? But like what Tom mentioned, the nuances of Japanese languages, the nuances of like Brazilian, Indonesian have like different types of like things that you do need to localize. So localization means beyond translating, right? So on that topic, right, has there ever been a feature that, for example, landed super perfectly in some of the global market, but then when it comes to Southeast Asia, just like really tough to crack? If you're open to share.
Yeah, I think like payments and packaging for us is like, every market responds differently to how we have packaged and priced our product. So like in Japan, we see really good response for like our 12-month like longer term plans. But in some markets like Southeast Asia, where the sort of the value exchange is used to being like small snackable subscriptions for like one-off use cases. So we introduced with GoPay short duration plans in Indonesia, so 1 day, 7 day, 14-day plans, and we really found that like for the local markets, like that was something that we've had our monthly plans in sort of central markets for so long, but really being able to respond to how a market is used to purchasing and using products, in Southeast Asian markets, really like being able to provide those like bite-sized subscriptions to ensure that users get access to the premium Canva offering for whatever their use case is. I think that's a key example for us.
Interesting. And in the past like 2-3 years, like the speed of implementing AI products have been massive at Canva. Started off as like early experiments maybe 5-10 years ago with like Magic Eraser, Magic Write, like these little magics, into like putting it under the umbrella of Canva AI with value that really resonates to users. Would you be able to run us through a little bit like how do the team shape up this AI roadmap that would really be able to resonate with lots of users? And you did mention earlier as well that Indonesia is one of the fastest adoption of like AI technologies at Canva. So please do share some of those with the audience.
Yeah, like Indonesia for us is like a top 5 market for Canva Code and Canva AI. Really important market for what we're doing in the AI space. But for us, like the trick obviously is like how do we make it sort of be globally developed but really work for the local market. And for us, it just starts with like key principles around like making it safe, making it diverse, and then more importantly making it useful. Like we don't think about developing AI just for AI's sake. Like as I mentioned before, like we're trying to open sort of creation and design up to literally anyone on the planet is the mission, regardless of what their like level of like digital maturity is and their design maturity. And so like how do we integrate AI into like the core workflows of a user? Like how do we make sure that it is available to them at the inspiration stage, the generation stage, the like editing and the feedback loop around like, am I designing, is this going to like land and be impactful, and then through that whole journey.
Yep, and maybe something people are curious about sometimes is that many of them is working like a little bit on the other way around like Canva. So Canva started in Australia and enter a new market, but many people here maybe start from Indonesia trying to enter global market, or start from Singapore trying to enter like broader Southeast Asia, maybe even more. So do you have any like examples of when you are testing a product or experiments within like one region, let's say Indonesia first or Singapore first, then try to scale it like beyond to like some of the other regions as well? If yes, like, can you share some of the learnings with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, like what we're really focused on doing is being like easy to use. And so some of the features that we're introducing, particularly in the AI space, it's sort of putting the cart before the horse if, we're introducing it into like a market that may not have the digital maturity to be able to like incorporate that effectively into what they're trying to create. So in those markets, we really prioritize like onboarding and education and really like, this is how you can use Canva to achieve what you want. And then, slowly bringing in those like more advanced tools. So, that's certainly like, going from market to market is like, and performance is another really big thing. Like in certain markets, like where there's like maybe low internet connectivity or, like a array of different device types. Like how do we make, and this is something that we're still, working on and trying to improve every day, but how do we make Canva really just fit the, that local use context? And as I said earlier, like how do we be as effective as we can be for each market that we enter, rather than just like, blindly scaling. And, in the early stage, like when resources are a little bit more limited, you sort of have to be focused on efficiency and like how do we, just localize language and some more basic things. But, now that we're at the position that we're, we've got, more than $3.5 billion of revenue, and we've got that ability to really invest, like what is an effective delivery of the product in Indonesia versus the Philippines versus, Spain versus Nigeria and some of those markets?
Yep. So you mentioned a lot about like scaling too quickly or scaling perhaps not too, not quick enough. Do you have any sense of like how product leaders would be able to understand like these nuances better, especially in different market setup? Like for example, in your case, at what point do you build the confidence and the conviction that, okay, this is something we're ready to launch for Indonesia? And at what point is it like, okay, you know what, maybe this is not going to work. Then maybe we should shut down this feature for some particular region.
I mean, like, I think some like growth is the real output of whether you've been successful in a given market. Like we still struggle in some markets around like, local payments, and like we're seeing in some markets like payment methods that are really global payment methods still being the leaders of monetization in that market, rather than like the deeply local payment methods that in that market. So that's like a signal that like until we've got a given local payment method being the primary method, that we haven't got that right yet. And so like at every stage, like if growth is happening in a given market, it's generally because all of the elements are correct. Like you've lined up everything from a product and a marketing perspective to make it grow, and the market is, using it and purchasing it and telling you that it's effective. And then it's like, well, how do we scale what has been a recipe that's worked here? How do we like condense that down to like the key principles, and then take it to another market and work out the nuances to make those key principles work?
Sounds good. Okay, so we talk a bit about AI in the beginning. We talk a bit about like localization and scaling, but curious to talk about the people behind it, the team. So like, how does the structure has evolved, especially from the early days into like what you see today, and especially with the rise of AI, has anything changed with how the team is collaborating, working? Has it been even more efficient or like more effective, as you'd like to say, for Canva's team, especially on like handling this global product, and especially on like Southeast Asia as a scope?
Yeah, I mean, like originally, like Canva is like, most of its employees are Australian based, and at the, in 2013, 14, 15, it's, almost 100% of employees are Australia based. And as we've grown, we've, opened up offices in the US and the UK and all of these parts of the world. And so the employee base is really like diversified around the world, somewhat unintentionally because, you know, we're trying to hire the best talent around the world, and wherever that talent is, we like to hire. But now more intentionally, like we're entering regions with more sort of thoughtfulness and investment. So, you know, we're really focused on Southeast Asia as a really critical region. You know, setting up local teams within the countries of Southeast Asia. You know, hiring country managers in Indonesia and Vietnam and the Philippines and Thailand, to basically like guide the global teams on what Canva needs to look like and feel like and how it needs to behave for that local market. So like that's really the key investment now after sort of localizing, because Canva's been, you know, such a valuable tool for people all over the world just because it is. You know, really being thoughtful around like let's tap into the local experts in a given country, set up teams there and basically have them tell us what Canva needs to do for them. And that's essentially my role. Like I'm based in Australia and I'm basically the connective point between what the local markets need and what the global teams need to understand from that perspective. So if there's local payment methods that need to be introduced in a local market, like it's my job to make sure that, you know, the team in Indonesia gets those local payment methods added to Canva so that the users of Canva in that market can use Canva in the way that suits them, rather than having them try to use it in a way that just suits us, which is not an effective way to do it.
Yeah. I remember before the talk we had a little chat, and you mentioned that my job is essentially to listen, which I think is more powerful than what you may have thought, because Southeast Asia, huge market, many different nuances everywhere, many perhaps contradicting opinions from each and every region, and how to balance it out with what the global roadmap looks like. So I think especially for PMs who are handling like global market and have similar role, that is I think a very, very important point that Tom has shared on how to collaborate effectively with like country teams. So now that you've listened, gathered so many insights from like many of this region, and also seeing how AI has been evolving so far, looking ahead, what excites you the most about building products at Canva?
Well, I mean, it's been the same for the whole time that Canva has been a company, which is like, how do we help someone achieve like a real world outcome? So, for us, really, like, people don't wake up every morning and think, how am I going to use Canva today? Like that, maybe some of you do. I don't know. I don't think many people wake up every day and think of all the ways that Canva can be useful to them. It's really our job to put that context in the mind of a user, to be like, because Canva, one of the challenges that Canva can help people do almost an infinite number of things in an infinite number of use cases, and that's really powerful, but it can be really tough to communicate that and help people understand all of the ways that it can be used. So I think like AI for us has really been a real tailwind in because it helps us do that at even greater scale, because AI can more infinitely show and help users achieve that array of things, which we couldn't. Like when I started at Canva, I sat next to our head designer, Poppy, and I was a terrible designer, and I would be like creating things on Canva, and she would be looking over my shoulder being like, that's horrible, that looks terrible, that's not going to work. And she would give me all of these tips on like change the kerning and the alignment and all of these things, and I got to be a better designer because of it. But you can't really scale Poppy to a billion people, but AI really can help us scale that sort of insight to more and more people. So I think the most exciting thing is really being able to harness it in a way that, if someone has never designed anything before, you could go to Canva and it will design you something that 15 years ago you just wouldn't have been able to do as someone that had none of that skill. And AI just helps us get to that point much, much quicker and more effectively.
Yep, I think very interesting point. As we talk about AI, I think essentially like the team at Canva is hyper focused on the problem to solve. which is like, making everyone be able to design and like democratizing design to absolutely everyone regardless of their background, right? So how do you keep this culture consistent, this point of view consistent from day one? Because it's basically very easily to get distracted at one point to be like, I don't know, we're gonna be the AI first, whatever, AI, like maybe most of startups these days would just start their business with like, I'm an AI for this, right? But then your core is solving this problem has always been the same, even in your Canva round 1 or Canva round 2 or right now, in the current AI landscape. So can you share a bit on that aspect? How do you keep this culture so consistent and these values so consistent?
Yeah, I mean, like values is definitely something that Canva invests quite heavily in ensuring that everyone, like particularly as we move into like different regions and the team becomes bigger and, is set up in different pockets of the world. It's like, how do we make sure that the outputs of all those teams is like culturally flexible, but also like, it looks consistent generally speaking at a high level. And I think that's really like, setting the values at the top, like what are we trying to achieve? It's like we're trying to make design simple. We've got these like core tenets that everyone in the company is aware of, and so you can put those core tenets in like a given market, and the like execution of those will look slightly different in each market. But like like let's stick to like making design simple. Like let's stick to focusing on what the user is actually trying to achieve rather than like complicating the whole process. So I think those guiding principles really sort of helps to achieve that.
Nice. So I think after this, we definitely will have some Q&A. So people, please do prepare if you have some questions for Tom. But final question before we go. Everyone here, I bet, is a product builder. There's designers here, there's developers here. I know some of you guys in the audience already. Whether you're a startup, whether you are working for a company, do you have any tips or advice on how do you really make product that would connect to the user, whether it's AI or not AI or whatever, essentially?
Yeah, I think it's more of the same. It's like really obsessing and focusing on the outcome that the person is trying to achieve, rather than what they could do in the product. So, and it's a hard thing to do, like we focus so much on the features of Canva and like what Canva does, but really like focusing on what a solopreneur, like what are they actually trying to achieve? Like what is their like real world goal? And then what are all of the ways that a tool like Canva can help them achieve that? We were speaking before, like from your product perspective, it's like someone is trying to travel to another country. They need a visa, but then they also need other things. And like at Canva, like a solopreneur might come to Canva to design like a business card. But we know that they're also trying to sell whatever they've created. And so they're probably going to do that on social media. And there's so many things that they could create on Canva to support what is their actual real world goal, which is not to design on Canva. Like, as I said, no one wakes up, maybe some do, but no one wakes up to be like, my goal today is to design something on Canva. Their goal is to, do well at school, to sell more of the product that they've created, and like obsessing over what their goal is. It makes the product roadmap just become more visible, because it's like, well, there's so many things that we could do within, Canva's product environment to help a user to achieve that. And then how do we, speak to people in a way that connects to what they're trying to achieve, I think is a really important thing.
Yep. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think very relevant reminder for us all product builders. I mean, even for me myself, I don't expect my user waking up and like, oh, I really want to open SPUN to make visa today. No. And I feel like, we have to be realistic as well, right? About the values and the literal, thing they want to achieve through your platform, which in your case, you want to get a job done so you can maybe play with your kids in the evening. I don't know, that's more. And then how do we do it as quickly as possible? Use Canva, as you have all this tool set up. And maybe for my case, like, people want to go from point A to point B as quickly as possible, as reliable as possible. That's how they use my platform. And that's maybe the right positioning. It doesn't have to be as pushy as many of us in Southeast Asia used to believe in the past 10 years or so. So yeah, I hope there are lots of interesting learnings from this chat, and let's open the Q&A session. So anyone has questions, please do raise your hands up. Anybody has any question? All right, there you go.
Hey, thank you for the session. It really sparked some curiosity with me. My name is Aurelia, and I want to ask, like, as you discussed together, there are 1,000 user needs and unique journeys beyond the SEA. So what does Canva prioritize, and how does Canva decide when adding a new feature? Is there like a structured workflow you guys follow? So do you just focus on the ease of use and the accessibility? So would like to hear some advice on that. Thank you.
Definitely, like it's somewhat proactive and reactive. Like we launched a partnership with the Indonesian Ministry of Education a few years ago, providing access to students and teachers in Indonesia, the free Canva for Education upgrade. And that was sort of like a partnership that we hadn't really like thought that it would become like a new way to give access to students and teachers to our like premium education offering, but it did. And then now we're like, well, these partnerships could work in more countries that have like that ICT structure and a Ministry of Education. So now we're launching these partnerships in various other countries around the world. And so that really drove the like, what do we need to build into the education product to make it really work for a governmental entity that oversees the professional development of all of the teachers in a country and the learning of all of the students. Like, how can Canva evolve to really suit that? So some of it is very much like responding to those opportunities that just come about, and we go deep into a market and we start to understand more about like how users use the product and what they expect from it, and that can really like inform the roadmap. In terms of prioritization for us, it's still like we probably focus less on optimizing the outcome for the users that we have today, and more around like, well, we're trying to get to 1 billion users, and so what does the opportunity look like that may not exist on the platform today? Like, what is that future? So like, a market like India is just such a significant opportunity, and there's so much that Canva needs to do to be able to offer accessibility to the entire country of India, and today maybe they're not accessing it in the way that they need to, and so like, what do we need to build to to deliver that growth in the future? So sort of looking beyond like, what is the current state of the usage and the user base, into like, what do we need to invest into to really achieve that longer term growth. I don't know if that answers your question.
Hope it answers your question. Yes, thank you so much. Anyone else have any other question? All right.
Yes. Hello, my name is Ardi. I'm curious about Canva design. How are your process or method? Because Canva right now can be used by all generations. Like my kids use it, my mom use it also. Is it something like specific personas that you build product for, or just build a good product for that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really hard balance. It's a really good question, because it's always the balance of like, are we building, because we're building it for everybody, but you can't really build something for everybody. Like, you need to build it for somebody to get to everybody, if that makes sense. And so, there are some like key personas that like really use Canva in a really like scalable way, like students and teachers in an education setting. That's a really big segment of use at Canva. Solopreneurs and SMBs is a really big segment, and enterprises becoming a really big segment. And then you've got all of the like personal usages, like birthday cards and that sort of thing. And so we do tend to like balance the like, how do we make sure a feature can work across all of those groups? Like, how can we build like bulk uploads in a way that is going to work for like enterprise customers, but also like, teachers or students. So we are quite thoughtful of, we don't necessarily like to introduce features that is only ever going to serve like one group, but it's like, how can we introduce a feature that can work universally, but we can adapt it, to work for, a student and educational setting, and then an enterprise setting, and then, an SMB setting. So, again, there's quite a bit of balance there too.
All right, so that's the only question we can take for today. So last but not least, Tom, leave us with one key principle about AI and design for the audience.
Oh, one key principle. I think, that build for the outcome that the person is trying to achieve, I think, is a really good guiding principle.
Yes. All right. So thank you so much all for your time, and I hope you guys enjoyed the session today. Ciao, ciao.